The annual Whitmore family barbecue was in full swing on a sunny afternoon at my uncle's country club in Napa Valley, when my cousin Caroline's voice sliced through the hum of laughter and clinking wine glasses. "Oh wow, Ellie's here, still pushing paper at some desk job, hun?" I adjusted the sleeve of my understated cream dress. "Valentino," though no one here would recognize that, and offered a faint smile. If only they knew that by Monday morning, I'd be finalizing the acquisition of both Caroline's overpriced wellness app and my other cousin Zach's struggling venture fund. "Still at Redmond Group," I murmured as I accepted a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. The same Redmond Group that I control under a network of holding companies. To them, I'm just Ellie Whitmore, the underachieving 34-year-old cousin who never quite lived up to the family's impossible standards. But in the financial world, I'm known simply as EW Capital, a silent but dominant force behind some of the biggest private equity deals on the West Coast. Zach, wearing a flashy suit 2 sizes too big, grinned as he sauntered over. "You know, Elle, I could hook you up. We're always hiring entry-level admin staff, better than whatever 9-to-5 grind you're stuck in." I took a slow sip to hide my amusement. He had no idea I'd already bought Whitestone Ventures, his firm, piece by piece, through silent partners and trust-owned shell entities. "That's really generous, Zach," I replied sweetly. 8 years ago, after Grandpa Whitmore died, everyone expected his estate to be divided cleanly among us grandkids. Instead, he made individual allocations. Caroline got angel investment money. Zach received control of the family's venture branch. And me? I was handed what they called the leftovers. His old real estate office in downtown Santa Rosa and a $200,000 0-cents trust. "Poor Ellie," they'd whispered behind champagne glasses. "He doted on her, but didn't leave her anything useful." What they didn't realize was that Grandpa's shabby office sat atop decades of quietly acquired mineral deeds and water rights, assets worth tens of millions. He hadn't just given me an inheritance, he'd given me the blueprint. We spent Sundays together, reviewing land maps and oil rights. "You don't need to be loud to be powerful," he used to say. "Control isn't in attention, it's in patience." Now, as I watched my family flaunt leased watches and borrowed status, I smiled. They spent their fortunes chasing validation. I built mine in silence. "Ellie, sweetheart," my Aunt Beatrice swept in, air-kissing both my cheeks with exaggerated warmth. "We missed you at the Napa Club mixer last weekend. Caroline was filling us in on her startup's big win." Caroline beamed, tucking a strand of perfectly styled hair behind her ear. "We just closed another funding round, $10 million, 0 cents this time." She turned to me with a practiced smirk. "Not that you'd really understand the complexities of tech finance, Ellie." I nodded politely, though my mind flicked to the reports sitting on my home office desk. Caroline Tech had posted 3 consecutive quarters of losses. That latest $10 million, 0 cents, wasn't a victory, it was a lifeline. And she'd find out soon enough that the silent investor keeping her company afloat was me. "Sounds exciting," I said smoothly. Before she could bask too long, Zach butted in. "Whitestone Ventures just acquired 3 new AI startups. We're projecting billion-dollar returns within the year." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. His fund was bleeding capital. The acquisitions were last-ditch plays to impress new investors and hide ballooning debt. That's what made my stealthy acquisition of Whitestone so seamless. Desperation makes people sloppy. "How wonderful for you both," I said sincerely, more than they'd ever realize. My cousin Reed, who dubbed himself the family's financial prodigy, sauntered over with a condescending grin. "Still pushing papers at Redmond Group, Ellie? You really should think bigger. Caroline and Zach are out here building empires." If only he knew the papers I pushed involved multi-million-dollar development deals and city-wide zoning approvals. Redmond Group, under my hidden control, now owned half the downtown Santa Rosa commercial district and large tracts across 2 other states. "We can't all be entrepreneurs," I replied, sipping my wine. They chuckled, they pitied me. I played the role they expected. Even my mother joined the chorus. "You had such potential, Elle. But honestly, have you even tried to grow your career?" "Oh, Trevor could help," Aunt Beatrice chimed in. "He's done such amazing things with Grandpa's old firm." I thought of the boardroom meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow, where Trevor would discover that EW Capital, his mysterious new majority shareholder, had the power to fire him. "I'm comfortable where I am, Mom," I said with a calm smile. Caroline overheard and laughed. "Comfortable? Honey, you should want more than that." "We're raising again next month," she said, eyes gleaming. "From EW Capital," Zach added proudly. I clinked my glass. Good luck with that. "They're the biggest name in private equity right now," Zach said, swirling his wine. "Very hush-hush, but they've expressed interest in both our companies." I hid my smile behind my champagne flute. EYW Capital, my carefully orchestrated network of shell corporations and blind trusts, had spent the last 6 years becoming a dominant, anonymous force in acquisition deals across the western U.S. Tomorrow, the curtain would finally drop. "I've heard of them," I said with practiced neutrality. "Quite the portfolio they're building." Caroline scoffed, not even trying to mask the disdain in her voice. "As if you'd understand what goes into that kind of deal. Stick to your filing cabinets, Ellie. Leave the real strategy to those of us who actually run companies," Zach added, his fork clinking against his half-finished steak. Before I could respond, Aunt Beatrice clapped her hands and called everyone to the dinner table. I ended up between Zach and Caroline, listening to them volley inflated business jargon as if they were on a CNBC segment. "Whitestone Ventures is about to close the biggest deal in our history," Zach boasted. "Once EW Capital signs on, we'll be scaling internationally. We're talking billions." Caroline rolled her eyes. "Please, your dinosaur of a firm is one misstep from collapse. My wellness AI platform is the future, and trust me, EW knows it." They're leaning toward me. If only they knew the truth, that both of their companies already belonged to me. Their pleas, pitch decks, and projections had all funneled into my strategy. Their destinies had already been decided over mahogany boardroom tables and NDA-laced email threads. "Speaking of your future," my mother's voice floated from across the table. "Ellie, have you thought about going back to school? Maybe get that MBA you always talked about." I pictured my corner office. Glass walls overlooking downtown Santa Rosa, marble floors, the discreet security detail outside my door, and the wall, lined with framed contracts, each one a silent takedown. "I'm fine where I am, Mom," I said gently. Zach snorted. "That's the problem. No ambition. Grandpa would be crushed if he saw you now." I touched the gold key around my neck, the one to Grandpa's old office, where it had all begun. "I think Grandpa understood more than you ever did." The topic shifted to vacation homes and boat upgrades, but I caught the tension in Caroline and Zach's side glances. Tomorrow's meeting with EY Capital meant salvation or collapse. They had no idea that the secret investor was the same cousin they'd mocked for a decade. As dessert was served, I excused myself. "Big day tomorrow," I said. "Don't overdo it filing those reports," Caroline called after me, laughing. In my car, a discreet armored Audi, I dialed my assistant. "Is everything ready for tomorrow?" "Yes, Miss Whitmore, the boardroom is yours." "The contracts are finalized and the board members have been briefed," my assistant confirmed over the speaker. "Your cousins won't know what hit them." I drove back to my penthouse loft overlooking Santa Rosa, designed not with flashy displays like Caroline's pastel art gallery of a condo or Zach's velvet-curtained bachelor palace, but with quiet sophistication, natural woods, clean lines, and a sense of calm Grandpa always valued. In my office, I reviewed the paperwork one last time. Tomorrow, EW Capital would lift the veil and my entire family would see the truth. Their invisible cousin hadn't just built a career, I'd built a legacy. I picked up a photo that had always stayed on my desk. Grandpa and me, seated at his old downtown office, poring over a zoning map. His smile was proud but subtle, he never bragged. The best kind of success, he used to say, is the kind they never see coming. Tomorrow they'd understand exactly what he meant. The next morning I arrived at Redmond Group headquarters early, not in my usual neutral skirt and cardigan, but a tailored navy power suit, worth more than Caroline's SUV. My assistant Sophie greeted me at the private elevator. "Both your cousins are already here," she said with a slight grin. Caroline's on her third request for matcha, and Zach's pacing like he's in a hostage situation. They feel it coming, I replied, they just don't know what it is. The conference room, perched on the top floor, offered sweeping city views. Inside, Caroline and Zach sat at opposite ends of the long table, posturing behind confidence they clearly didn't feel. Their attorneys looked tense. "What is she doing here?" Caroline asked sharply when I entered. "This is a private meeting with EW Capital." Zach chuckled, dismissive. "Ellie, we appreciate the moral support, but this is a bit over your head. Maybe grab us some coffee while the real decision-makers arrive." I set my briefcase on the table. "I think you'll find I'm right where I need to be." Sophie handed out folders to each person present. "Please review the contents," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You'll find full documentation of EW Capital's ownership of both Whitestone Ventures and Caroline Tech, as well as proposed terms for the merger." Zach froze mid-page. Caroline's lips parted, trembling. This has to be a mistake," she whispered. "EW Capital is you?" she gasped. I smiled, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Ellie Whitmore, founder and CEO of EW Capital, majority shareholder of Redmond Group, and, as of this morning, the owner of both your companies." Zach's jaw tightened. "No, you're a secretary." "No," I corrected. "I let you think I was." "Just like I let you believe Grandpa's old office building was worthless," I said, calmly placing my phone face down on the table. "Just like I let you both believe your companies were still under your control." "But my tech platform," Caroline stammered, her voice cracking. "It's been losing money for 3 quarters straight." I nodded. "Exactly. And the only reason you secured that last round of funding was because I arranged it through one of my subsidiary investment arms." Zach was frantically flipping through the packet, his face paling. "Whitestone Ventures, my father's company," he began. "Has been mine for months," I said, almost gently. "Those high-risk investments you've been using to plug the holes? I've been buying the debt, quietly, strategically." The doors burst open. My mother, Aunt Beatrice, and a few other family members entered, clearly summoned by panicked texts from Zach and Caroline. "What's going on?" my mother demanded. "Why are they saying something about Ellie and some capital firm?" "Perfect timing," I said, rising from my seat. "Sophie, would you please bring up the presentation?" The wall screen came to life, displaying a sleek diagram, layer upon layer of holding companies, trusts, and equity groups. Lines connected logos and names to a single hub in the center, EW Capital. "This," I told the room, "is the real me. Over the past 8 years, while you all whispered about my wasted potential, I was building this. Over $500 million. 0 cents in assets spanning real estate, technology, and private equity." I let the silence stretch. "That includes Redmond Group, Whitestone Ventures, Caroline Tech, and more than 30 other firms you've never even heard of." My mother stared, speechless. "How?" "Remember Grandpa's worthless office downtown?" I asked. "It came with property rights, water claims, and mineral deeds. Millions in hidden value. He didn't leave me scraps. He left me the foundation." Caroline's face twisted in anger. "You deceived us. Just like you pretended your company wasn't bleeding out," I shot back. "You wore your debt like designer labels. And Zach, you called yourself a mogul, but you were clinging to borrowed time." "We were building something," Zach argued. "No, you were playing business," I replied. "Image over substance." I turned to the legal team. "Shall we move to the merger terms? Both companies will be restructured under the EW Capital umbrella. Leadership will be re-evaluated." "You can't do this," Caroline whispered. "I already did." My mother stepped forward, eyes misted. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Would you have listened?" I said, unlocking my briefcase. "Or would you have tried to claim it just like you did with everything else I ever valued?" I pulled out an old photograph. Grandpa, seated in his worn leather chair, pointing at a map of Santa Rosa. Me beside him, wide-eyed, taking in every word about mineral rights, zoning leverage, and the power of patience. He knew exactly what he was doing when he left me that worthless downtown building. He knew I'd recognize its real worth and what it could become. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Signatures, restructurings, deal memos flying between teams. In the end, both Caroline and Zach had no choice but to admit it. EW Capital offered the stability and leadership their companies desperately needed. Their egos were bruised, sure, but they still had roles, for now. Zach was reduced to investment advisor. Caroline, no longer CEO, was kept on as a consultant with guardrails. As the lawyers trickled out, my mother lingered behind. "All these years," she said softly, "we thought we were the successful ones." "Success doesn't always need to speak loudly," I replied, my gaze drifting to the skyline. "Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one shaping the future." In the following months, things shifted. Caroline's startup, with real oversight and funding, finally started turning a profit. Zach, no longer calling the shots, actually began learning the fundamentals for the first time. The family dynamic changed, too. Gone were the backhanded comments and pitying glances. At the next family gathering, when someone asked about my work, they actually listened. Really listened. As for Grandpa's old office, I kept it. Renovated the rest of the floor, but left his desk untouched. Sometimes I'd sit there at night, fingers tracing the grain of the old oak, hearing his voice in the quiet. True power doesn't need an audience. One evening, as I was locking up, I found Zach waiting downstairs. "I've been thinking," he said, humbled. "All that time we were showing off. We missed what Grandpa was trying to teach us." I touched the gold key around my neck. "What was that?" "That real success isn't about looking powerful," he said. "It's about being powerful. You built an empire, while we played dress up." I nodded. "Want to know the real secret?" He leaned in. "Success doesn't need applause. It needs patience, focus, and the strength to keep building while everyone thinks you're failing." As I walked to my car, the city skyline rose before me. My skyline, though few knew it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting, "I told you so." It's proving yourself right quietly, completely, until they can't ignore it anymore. And sometimes that truth comes wrapped in a $500 million 0 cents empire. And the sweetest success of all? Victory on your own terms. Thank you. Not just for watching, but for seeing me. For years I was the invisible one, the overlooked cousin, the secretary at family dinners who nobody thought twice about, but while they were talking over me, I was building quietly, brick by brick, until the empire spoke for itself. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you weren't enough, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what are you building in silence? And if my journey resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Not for the drama, but for the reminder that true success doesn't need permission or applause. It just needs persistence. Here's what I've learned. You don't need to explain your dreams to people who laugh at them. You don't need to shout to make an impact. What you do need is vision, patience, and the courage to keep going even when no one is watching. Because one day, those same people who doubted you will have no choice but to recognize what you've become. Build in silence. Win with grace, and never forget, you get to define what success looks like.